Good morning. Welcome to Engaging Your Employees When You Can't Volunteer in Person, Strategies for Social Impact in Light of COVID-19. My name is Jenny Lawson. I'm the Chief Civic Innovation Officer here at Points of Light. We so appreciate you giving your time today to help each other and our communities in these most challenging times. These have been unprecedented days, and each of us is called to respond to the needs of our colleagues around the world, across the US, around the block, in the next cubicle, and now for many, the needs of our families in the next room. Today's agenda is designed to help you navigate and see what might be ahead. We'll look at what's needed. We'll hear from Points of Light Global Affiliate in Singapore, a country whose virus trajectory is several weeks ahead of the US, to understand the response and how talent and the talent of corporate volunteers is needed in new ways. And we'll hear from Points of Light affiliate in New Rochelle, one of the first quarantine communities here in the US, to understand what the on-the-ground realities of serving in these times is really like. You'll hear from Points of Light's corporate solutions teams and our programming teams ideas for where you can continue to go through help. You'll hear about tools and resources, ideas and strategies, websites and partners who can help you navigate through next steps. And the resources section that will be part of this communication and today's webinar dashboard will be downloadable for you to use and quickly share with your network. And finally, we'll hear from our partners at Edelman on what is expected. They'll share a unique COVID-19 trust barometer glimpse into how people are understanding and trusting messengers and messages at this time to help you best communicate with your employees and other stakeholders. For those of you who don't know Points of Light, Jeff, if you would advance the slide. Points of Light is on a mission to inspire, equip, and mobilize people to take action that changes the world. We envision a world in which everyone discovers the power to make a difference, creating healthy communities and vibrant participatory societies. That mission and vision seems more relevant in these days than ever before. We accelerate a people-powered and engaging network and believe that every action is significant. And to tell you more about how we are thinking about this work in this moment, I am delighted to introduce you to Natalie Paquin. She is, Jeff, if you could advance the slide, she is the CEO of Points of Light's global community. Jeff, go back if you would, just a moment, please. Points of Light Global Community serves nonprofits, corporate community, and individuals with a reach of more than 200 nonprofit affiliate partners in 36 countries around the world, and a corporate network of 227 and growing corporate engaged partners and more than 6,000 Daily Point of Light Award winners and 1.5 million awardees through the Presidential Volunteer Service Awards. Natalie, over to you. Thanks for being with us today, everybody. Introducing Natalie Paquin.
Hello, and thank you, Jenny, and thank you all, and welcome. Thanks for taking time today to join us, to be thinking of others, and to consider the impact of your work in this new future we're experiencing together. I want to start by saying that at Points of Light, we have always believed in the power of people. And while these are uncertain and unprecedented times, we continue to believe in the power of people. And certainly, the very best of people is what's going to get us through. And we are seeing that each day. You may know that 63 million Americans volunteer about 8 billion hours of their time and talents each year. That contributes approximately $203 billion of value in the United States. And now, these volunteers, due to social distancing and recommendations from the CDC, are unable to continue volunteering, even though 3 out of 5 nonprofits say volunteers are critical to delivering on their mission. That leaves nonprofits to face the task of figuring out how to keep their doors open and how to deliver on their much needed services while accounting for the loss of those volunteers. And it also leaves our corporate partners and the CSR sector to wonder how they can best support and continue their work. According to a survey done by the National Conference on Citizenship during the Great Recession from 2008 to 2012, 72% of Americans said they were devoting less time to volunteering and other civic activities, like providing food and shelter to those in need and participating in public discussions like town hall style meetings. If the economy slides into a recession after COVID-19, we want to find ways to continue to support the nonprofit sector and their critical resource of human capital, people lending support to causes they care about. Today, Jeff, advance the slide, please. We will work together to try to answer a few critical questions, including how do we keep civic engagement momentum going and employees engaged when their normal routines and plans are on hold? How do you continue to support your nonprofit partner and the communities that are experiencing specific impacts from reduced participation? And how do you support efforts to combat the pandemic? The slide you see is an illustration of the various ways we see people engaging with issues that matter to them. We see civic engagement as more than volunteerism, as more than volunteering. It includes leveraging your purchase power, donating and using your voice through social networks. There are a lot of ways for us to move the needle forward, and as you hear the presentations that follow, we ask you to consider these mechanisms as well to engage and meet people where they are. It's my pleasure to introduce and turn this conversation over to my colleague, Meg Maloney. Meg joins us from New York Cares, where New York Cares is one of our largest affiliates in our network, and Meg has a lot of experience working on volunteer issues and also working in the disaster and crisis management. Meg?
Great. Thank you, Natalie, so much, and welcome again, everybody. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us on this webinar about engaging employees when you can't meet in person. I have the privilege to work with the affiliates that Points of Light has in our network around the world. They are doing amazing work every day of the year, meeting the most pressing needs in their local communities. During a time of emergency and crisis, these affiliates are working with schools, homeless shelters, senior centers, and every area of the social sector in their communities to identify and respond to the evolving and emerging needs that a crisis presents. With COVID-19, that's no different. And so for today's webinar, we wanted to bring you two perspectives, followed by our colleague, Jonathan Esperedo, who's going to go through a number of specific tactics and approaches for engaging employees that he's seeing working with corporate partners. And so the two affiliate perspectives we want to share today is one from an affiliate that is a little bit further ahead in their experience in response to COVID-19 than many of us in the States or Europe. So we have Peter Yang, the leader of Impact in Singapore. And Peter's has a depth of experience in his background, and they've had a really creative and impactful skills-based virtual volunteer program in place that has new residents and new relevance during COVID-19. So you'll hear from him first, followed by a leader from our affiliate in north of New York City, Volunteer New York, who will give you more of the perspective of what it's like to be at a nonprofit that's right in the height of their response efforts. So Peter, are you ready to go?
Yeah, thank you, Meg.
Great. We're so grateful that you spend the time today, and thank you for sharing your insights with us.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Points of Light, of having me. Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter, and I'm the CEO of Impact, a social enterprise based in Singapore. And as Max mentioned, that COVID hit us in Singapore about 6 to 7 weeks ago. Since then, many of our volunteer programs with the corporates has been postponed or even cancelled. And we have developed a few virtual volunteer programs since then. And tonight I'll be sharing with one of those programs with you. That is the virtual pro bono business clinics. Next slide, please. Okay, so why did we even start this? I think that was 3 weeks into the COVID situation. We discovered that many of our nonprofit partners start to feel the hit. While in Singapore, we currently are not at a complete lockdown situation, but the social distancing has really had a tremendous adverse effect to our nonprofit partners. Just give 2 examples. One was our community food kitchen. One of them that delivers like about 2,500 meals to low income and single seniors on a daily basis. Since COVID-19, the volunteer has dropped completely to 0, and the staff is really finding it a challenge to make this meal to the seniors that critically relies on a daily basis. We have another charity that sells products made by people with disabilities at malls and events, so that they can provide job opportunities and income for a person with disabilities. Since COVID-19, their business is down about 70 to 80%. So the income and the job for those people with disability is greatly at risk. And they have been telling us that if the situation persists, they might have to temporarily close down or even completely shut down of their entire organization. So at this unprecedented time, many of our nonprofit leaders are not prepared to deal with this, and they were sharing with us that they don't really know how to manage their cash flow, manage their operations, and some of them doesn't really have a business continuity plan. At a similar timing, many of our corporate partners comes to us to say due to health and safety reasons, they have stopped volunteering, but however, they feel that there isn't really a need to do something about the situation, to help their nonprofit partners, but they're really wondering how they can make that happen. And for us as a capacity builder, we decided to move our regular clinics program on the virtual basis so that we can continue to support those nonprofits who are a bit at a loss and who can benefit from our corporate volunteers' skills in this extreme situation. So we rolled out this business clinics with the objective that nonprofit leaders can benefit from the volunteers to gain clarity in this critical moment to deal with the challenges such as cash flow management, such as business continuity planning. Next slides, please. So how it works, it's pretty straightforward. Each clinics, we will have invited about 10 to 20 nonprofit leaders, and we will match them one-to-one with a skilled volunteer from our corporate partners. From a volunteer perspective, each of them only need to commit 2.5 hours per clinics. So how it works is that 3 days before the actual clinics, we will have a volunteer briefing to make sure that the volunteer are prepared to know about the program, to know the contacts, to know the nonprofits they are pairing with. And during the actual day of volunteering, we started with 30 minutes contact setting so that the volunteer get to know the nonprofit partners. Before they dive into a 45 minutes one-on-one consultations, usually we pair maybe 1 or sometimes 2 volunteers into one organization so they can have a bit more all-rounded advice. And when that one-on-one clinic finishes, so we come back into a group and having our nonprofit partners share what they learned with their peers, which proven has to be a tremendous help for them to learn from each other how to deal with this situation. So all the 2 hours are conducted via Zoom, where we have different breakout rooms for our corporate volunteers. Next, please. So we have been running these clinics, and I have to say that this is one of the highest highest rated programs so far we ever run. We were really, really surprised. So MHEC will be selecting the nonprofit partners and helping to manage expectations from the nonprofit partners and matching the volunteers at the back end. So that our corporate volunteers only spend very short, about 2.5 hours into really doing it. So what's next after the clinics is really interesting that we have seen nonprofits want to follow up support, and that has turned into further volunteering opportunities for the corporates we have matched them with. And then we have looking at, once we learned that there are some common needs or common topics that the nonprofits are really need, like business continuity planning, we have turned them, and in the process of turning them, into a virtual kind of training classroom, so that more can benefit in this format. And we are also tracking the progress of the implementation, and with the aim that if we can feature some of these case studies, and with the help of our corporate partners, and making into a case study and making into a framework, so that we can inspire many other nonprofits who do not have the opportunity to join the one-on-one clinics. And we are also compile all the needs together so that we can share with the resource provider, like foundations, like government, and etc., to keep raising the awareness that what needs to be done in this unprecedented time. Next slide, please. So what does it mean for many of our corporate partners? And I think that is really the feedback we have heard from them is that it is really a way that in this isolation kind of period, that is something that is really meaningful for them to engage with their staff. And some of the staff has reported loneliness from the prolonged work from home, and they feel that this is a really meaningful ways to engage with the nonprofit partners as well as their colleagues in a very different setting. And second, we find it's really meaningful seeing how this advice has been appreciated by the nonprofit partners. And through this, some of them getting clarity to say what they need to do in this critical time, or even some have learned a innovative way to see how they can transform the operations to serve the needy, and they do not have to go down to the route of closing the services. And last but not least, and I think corporate partners have feedback to us that this gives them another innovative way to connect with the community, and even developing their staff. We had a very interesting case whereby in Singapore, their office doesn't have a particular skills, especially in the area of supply chain management and etc. So our corporate client has resulted to reaching out to their China kind of counterparts and bringing volunteer cross-border to support nonprofits in Singapore. So if you are one of the corporate partners who are looking for a safe way for your employees to volunteer, and you really want to help the nonprofits in this critical time, and share with them of how you are dealing with the situation, I would highly recommend you to give this a try. Yeah, so was my sharing about how we have learned and carried out doing the virtual pro bono clinics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was a great presentation and so helpful, I know, to many of our listeners. You guys are doing incredible work in Singapore, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share with us today. With that, we're going to move to our next affiliate perspective. We have Jeanette Gisbert, who is the incoming executive director to Volunteer New York, our affiliate in the New Rochelle area, north of New York City. That's one of the hot zones of the COVID-19 outbreak in the United States. So Jeanette, we really appreciate you taking the time to share this perspective about what's happening on the ground and how company partners could best work with nonprofits like yours that are going through this in their community right now. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thanks, Meg. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, just great.
Super. So first of all, thank you so much to Points of Light and to all of the attendees in today's webinar who took time from their busy schedule to learn more about how to engage in community. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to lift up Volunteer New York as an example of a small local nonprofit who is in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis right now. So as Meg and Jenny had mentioned, Volunteer New York is the Points of Light global affiliate just north of New York City. We support 3 counties, Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland counties. And has been mentioned, the city of New Rochelle, which many say has been the epicenter of the crisis in New York, is in Westchester. So I just wanted to set the stage a little bit about kind of who Volunteer New York is, and then how our work has been impacted by the situation. We are a staff of 15. We have over 500 nonprofit partners in the 3 counties that we serve. And last year, we inspired over 26,000 individuals to take action in our community. This year, we are celebrating our 70th anniversary, and so have kind of deep community roots and a history of mobilizing people power in support of community. Before the COVID-19 crisis, we did have some experience in the disaster space. As many volunteer connector organizations are asked to do in times of disaster. After Superstorm Sandy, we were asked to lean into our community's response and recovery and use the power of volunteerism to support that work. And so we did gain a certain amount of experience then. I also have experience in previous work. I also worked at New York Cares, similar to Meg, and was there during 9/11. And so kind of tapping into that body of knowledge and experience as well. But even though we have that foundation of knowledge at Volunteer New York, frankly, it was not a strategic priority for us. We recently completed a strategic plan, and while we discussed the role of disaster, we had to make some strategic decisions, and it wasn't a programmatic priority. However, today, I can tell you that that is not the case. And so I think it's very clear to say that COVID-19 has kind of become all-encompassing in terms of our work and our focus. And so our focus is really on 2 things. One is our programmatic efforts, and the second is the sustainability of our organization. And so under the programmatic work, we've worked really hard to stand up a virtual volunteer center where individuals in our community can go to and connect with opportunities to serve with opportunities that are specific to the COVID-19 crisis, and that has meant leveraging our relationships with our partners to identify things that are safe and meaningful for volunteers to do. And then also we have very strong relationships with some key government officials and the city of New Rochelle specifically, as I mentioned, where kind of this crisis started for us here in Westchester, is incredibly forward thinking. They understand that people power will be at the center of his community's recovery. And so he has asked Volunteer New York to dedicate a staff member who will be kind of embedded in the New Rochelle community and really looking to nonprofits and people to support their community's recovery. So really spending a lot of time figuring that out. And then from a sustainability perspective, I think as every nonprofit will, as every business will, is grappling with the economic impact of this situation. And so specifically, looking at our Volunteer Spirit Awards, which is our largest and only fundraiser, was scheduled for April 3rd. And so really looking to be creative and nimble about kind of how we move forward with that plan. And we really pride ourselves at Volunteer New York to think creatively. And so I think we're going to explore a virtual option is the idea on the table. And then also as far as sustainability goes, just kind of ensuring that our people are healthy physically as well as mentally. So it's all about the coronavirus for us right now, and just ensuring that we continue to remain healthy as an organization, because we know that we will play a key role in our community's recovery. And that's it.
Great. Thank you, Jeanette. One question before we pass it back to Jenny. If there's one thing that the folks listening to this webinar, if they were to call one of their local nonprofits that they have been connected with prior to COVID-19 ramping up, what would, from your perspective, what would you want that corporate partner and local company partner to say to you and talk through with you?
That's a great question, Meg. I think that every nonprofit partner needs strong partners right now. So we want our funders and our financial supporters to be transparent and compassionate and engage in kind of creative, solution-oriented conversations. And I think we also want that from our nonprofit partners. Right? We want people, I think now is a really great opportunity to have people check their egos at the door and kind of come together and say, how can we leverage each other's expertise and experiences in support of this situation. So I think just engaging in those really thoughtful conversations. And then I would also say that, especially for the folks on this call, all nonprofits are going to need ambassadors who will go back to their communities, their companies, and talk about the fact that nonprofits, as any other business, will be negatively impacted by this crisis. But at the same time, we know that we will be called upon to help our communities. And so it is really important that folks are talking about the importance of ensuring that the nonprofit communities remain stable and prepared to complete their missions. And so, yes, I guess I would say I hope that folks will be partners and ambassadors for us moving forward.
Thank you so much again for making time today in the middle of everything you guys are navigating. With that, Jenny, I'll turn it back to you.
Meg, thanks so much. And thank you, Peter and Jeanette. I think it's just a very thoughtful stage that you have helped to set for us in understanding the dynamics of responding to the crisis, using the skills that we all have, right? Like the ability to do this response, as you heard from Jeanette, like they have experience in responding to disaster, and it's a matter of dusting off what they thought were skills that were not primary strategic skills. And Peter's longtime experience in pro bono and skills-based volunteering and sort of, turning the creative screws just a little bit and making new implementation strategies for those things that you do well already. It's terrific advice, and we appreciate you helping us get the creative juices flowing. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Jenny Lawson, and I am delighted to welcome you today to Engaging Employees When You Can't Volunteer in Person, Strategies for Social Impact in the Light of COVID-19, a webinar presented by the Points of Light Global Network in partnership with the Points of Light Corporate Service Council. I'm delighted next to welcome to today's webinar, Jonathan Barreto. Jonathan is the Senior Vice President for Global Corporate Solutions here at Points of Light, leader of our network solutions in partnership with companies. And he and his team will bring forward some ideas for taking best practices and examples of how we have engaged without being in person in the past and making them relevant for today's situations. Jonathan, welcome, and I turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your time today. As Jenny said, my name is Jonathan. I'm originally from Brazil, and I lead Points of Light Corporate Solutions team, and I'm based in Washington, D.C. Through our network of affiliates in 37 countries, we support several multinational companies to better engage with their local communities and to deploy their employees to serve locally all over the world. We all know that planning for the impacts of the coronavirus or COVID-19 on communities, employees, and business operations has been an added focus for most employers over the last several weeks. We at Points of Light have witnessed our partners seeking to plan alternatives, postpone or cancel their planned volunteer experiences in response to the limitations of on-travel and event attendance. The desire to help is growing exponentially. People want to help more and more. At the same time, there are more and more limitations on ways to volunteer and support communities. There's no shortage of questions that you are trying to respond now. Yesterday, we had a call with one of our strategic partners, and I was reminded of something very important. This partner told us that many employees were emailing her or calling her, asking for updates on their major month of service. They're asking her if the community engagement will be canceled. And her response was very enlightening to me. She said, no, community engagement will not be canceled because we cannot cancel communities. We're gonna have to pivot our strategies, change the ways we engage. By community engagement, we always exist. So there are not many clear strategies or proved strategies at the moment. We are all learning by doing, and it's very important that we share our best practice and approaches. During this time, we all have to be creative to support our partners, employees, and communities. First of all, we must remain 100% focused on the health and safety of staff and partners, and always follow the CDC guidelines. Some of us still have to continue with our operations and have employees coming to work. In these cases, we might look for opportunities to contribute by doing things like assembling kits to be distributed to the one in need. We saw our partners working with meal packets, hygiene kits, education kits for kids. Our partners from UPS always reminded us yesterday that our American Red Cross is facing severe blood shortage in response to the coronavirus pandemic. And they're pleading for health individuals to donate to patients counting on life-saving blood. Jeff, next slide, please. However, the goal of this conversation today is to share strategies for employee volunteer when you cannot serve in person. As I mentioned earlier, there's no many clear and tested strategies at the moment. We are all learning by doing, and it's very important that we share our inspiring practices and approaches. We know we can't solve the challenge alone. We must work together to ensure that employees remain engaged, our communities remain strong, and that those who are most vulnerable continue to receive the support they need. The Points of Light team wants to highlight 4 strategies for responding to the needs and demands of this dynamic workforce. Today, we want to share with you ideas and inspirational practices on moving from in-person to volunteer community engagement. We'll talk about how to leverage this context as an opportunity to review and rethink internal policies and processes related to community engagement. We want to talk about how to leverage this momentum to build and strengthen advocacy and awareness campaigns. And finally, we're going to talk to you about the importance of focus on employee recognition and storytelling. Next slide, please, Jeff. The first thing we want to talk about is virtual volunteers, or ways your employees can volunteer from home as individuals or as teams. When you think about volunteers, the typical image that comes to mind is a team planting a community garden, revitalizing a local park, or painting a lively mural at the school. Yet, we all have to rethink and re-envision different ways to engage. Virtual volunteers not necessarily a new concept. All around the globe, at any given time, thousands, if not millions of citizens volunteer virtually, using their computers, the internet, even their smartphones. Rather than meeting in person, tech-based, virtual, or remote opportunities pair volunteers with needs. Virtual volunteers can perform short-term or long-term tasks from their computers. Points of Light compiled a very robust resource list of virtual volunteer opportunities categorized by activities, impact area, or beneficiaries. You can access this document after this webinar or in our website. Each of these opportunities have their own advantages and also limitations. Just an example, there's activities of longer duration that employee volunteers can do at home, but they require commitment and then many times training. As an example, the United Nations Volunteers, or UNV, contributes to peace and development through volunteer worldwide. Online volunteers allow organizations and volunteers to team up to address sustainable development challenges. They have opportunities to writing and editing documents, translation, research, art and design, and many others. BPeace is a US nonprofit that recruits business professionals to help entrepreneurs in countries emerging from war to create and expand business and employment opportunities, in particular to women. Another great example, and one of my favorites, is the Crisis Text Line, a free 24/7 national crisis intervention and counseling service conducted exclusively through SMS text. Volunteers use the nonprofit web-based platform to provide emotional support to texters who are dealing with a wide range of issues like bullying, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, and more. Prospective volunteers go through screening and a self-paced training. Once completed, volunteers sign up to take a 1 4-hour shift each week for a year. As you can see, these are examples of opportunities they can do from home, but might require some skills, training, and long-term commitment. But there are also some micro-volunteer opportunities. Micro-volunteer takes a simple idea that people are more likely to volunteer their time in short and convenient, bite-sized chunks. And it turns into a new approach to community action. It offers volunteers a series of easy tasks that can be done anytime, anywhere on their own terms. Micro-volunteer could involve anything from signing a petition or retweeting a message to taking part in a campaign, or even counting birds in your garden. The only requirement is that volunteers don't need to go through an application or a training process. The tasks take only minutes to complete or doesn't even require any time of commitment. Career Village is a great example of that. It's an online platform where students ask career questions that are answered by people working or that have worked on that field. All you need to do is to have a LinkedIn account to start helping students become better informed about career decisions they're facing. This type of opportunities leverage a concept that I personally really like, of crowdstorming. It's a process of getting outside opinions from lots of people to help to solve a problem or a question. Another example of an opportunity that can be very impactful and does not require any special skills is Be My Eyes. Be My Eyes is a free mobile app with one simple goal: to make the world more accessible for blind and low vision people. The app connects blind and low vision individuals with sighted volunteers and companies from all over the world through a live video call. There are also opportunities where employees can volunteer virtually as teams. For instance, we all know Wikipedia. Wikipedia is the largest online volunteer initiative in the world. To volunteer, you simply find an article that you have some knowledge and add information to the entry. One of our partners in Malaysia, for an example, organized a virtual skill-based volunteer Wikipedia translation marathon. Explaining, a group of employees divided into teams compete to be the team that translates the most articles from English to Malay. They focus on translating articles related to democracy and freedom of speech. Similar to that, we have seen partners creating virtual service projects for teams to support translation TED Talks, or employees working as teams to volunteer with missing maps, a humanitarian project that improves maps of parts of the world that are vulnerable to natural disaster, conflicts, or epidemics. However, as you can see, many of these solutions support global problems. They request long-term commitment, and they have waiting lists for volunteers because they work from meaningful and well-tested experience. The important question now is that how do we create the solutions to support our local communities? The answer to this question will probably come from your employees who are embedded in this community where they live and work. The answer might also come, actually, the answer will probably come from your local community partners who can share and translate to you what are the real needs of the community. As I mentioned earlier, the situation requires us to be very creative and take the time to hear from our community partners to understand their pressing needs, and from our employees to understand their ideas. Through our network of affiliates and corporate partners, we have seen fascinating ideas from different parts of the world. For instance, in Spain, our affiliate is working with one of their local companies to write letters of support to elders living in elder homes as a simple but effective way to fight social isolation. Other partners are organizing virtual food drives. Many food banks offer these opportunities. A virtual food drive is a web-based tool allowing individuals and organizations to host a food drive through the food bank website. Some of our corporate partners are also creating teams to compete on these food drives to realize which is the team who donates more. Jeff, can I have next slide, please? Another way to continue engagement in finding volunteer opportunities is through Points of Light Offer Good platform. Offer Good is a digital hub for volunteer and community engagement. Volunteer opportunities from many sites all around the web are pulled into Offer Good by feeds to provide the most comprehensive database of volunteer opportunities around the world. We pull in opportunities from IDLEs, AARP, United Way, the Points of Light Global Network, and many others, to help to connect volunteers to the projects and organizations that inspire them to serve. The Offer Good platform also helps individuals to host volunteer projects, whether with an organization or on their own. They can find volunteers and connect with friends to civic service. This week, we launched a new page on the platform where people can filter and search for volunteer opportunities where they can volunteer from home. We strongly suggest you to check the platform and encourage our nonprofit partners to host their volunteer opportunities there. Next slide, please, Jeff. Another important strategy to move from in-person to volunteer community engagement that several of our partners are using is to focus their volunteer engagement on skill-based and pro bono volunteer opportunities. So instead of meeting in person, we see our partners step into web-based meeting solutions like Zoom, Teams, or GoToMeetings to provide skill-based support to their nonprofits. As Peter Young mentioned earlier, many nonprofits are struggling to keep the organization running during economic hardships following the global pandemic. Nonprofits need support and guidance, and skill volunteers could be the solution. Corporate volunteers can help nonprofits in planning for this diversification of income streams, financial management, loan application, insurance, sales and forecasting, bridging loan preparations, business plan pivots in short term, marketing strategy, HR, legal issues, and many others. So do you know if your local nonprofit partners need some advice on how to think about the contingency plan for the impacts of the coronavirus? Have you heard about their main challenge? Repurpose in-person time for deeper strategic planning time with your nonprofit partners might help to surface meaningful projects for the future. However, it's very, very important to remember that solving capacity building problems requires time and bandwidth. In the middle of the crisis like this, some organizations are not in a position to take advantage of pro bono, but others, now is exactly when they need the most. You have to always remember to be a good partner by leaving the space for organizations to access the capacity, case by case. If you need support of an intermediary organization, one way to start is by checking the Global Pro Bono Network website. They serve to promote knowledge sharing, mutual support, and collaboration among pro bono providers from all over the world. They also have an extensive network of pro bono intermediaries. The Taproot Foundation and Pixera Global are close partners of Points of Light, and they are a tried and true solution and a great resource for virtual pro bono volunteering. In fact, the Taproot Foundation recently published a blog post on the top 5 ways your company can help nonprofits right now through pro bono. We really suggest you to check it out. Common Impact can also help your organization to tailor virtual experience for your workforce. Micromentor is another great example. They match small business owners with business mentors. In fact, Micromentor currently have a special page on the website to match small business owners who are currently concerned with keeping their business running over the next few months to mentors who have experience guiding a business through a period of sustainable revenue loss. Mentors can ask entrepreneurs can ask questions, and mentors can respond and start conversation with them. Jeff, next slide, please. The COVID-19 is undoubtedly a very concerning crisis, but it can also be an opportunity for companies to evaluate and improve their employee and community engagement strategies. We see some of our partners taking this time as an opportunity to upskill organizational learning. So, how can you use this moment as an opportunity to improve your strategy and infrastructure to support employees and community in terms of crisis? Much like a rainy day, if you cannot go outside, you can tackle an inside project. We see our partners using this moment as an opportunity to create or revamp their employee volunteer champion. Once the crisis is over, it's very important that you're able to put the feet on the pedal, not have to restart the car. This is an opportunity to analyze the current governance model, reconnect and empower your local volunteer leaders or champions, and guarantee that you have the right infrastructure in place to maximize the impact of our community engagement in the near future. This is also an opportunity to update or create strategies to efficiently leverage the volunteer management platform. We all work and sometimes we struggle with volunteer management platforms like Your Calls, Benevity, and many others. We have an opportunity to guide employees to these platforms and leverage these tools to be a source of information and employee engagement. Maybe, can you hold a focus group with your employees to gather feedback and ideas? Find time to listen and learn to your employees, can provide improvement solutions and breakthrough ideas for your programs. You also have to make sure that your employee volunteer strategy and your community engagement policies and procedures are updated and supportive of this new reality. For example, if you don't have a volunteer time off policy, now could be a good time to start thinking about one. If you have one, now it's time to make sure that you have clear procedures and policies that are inclusive of non-traditional volunteering. To have a Dollars for Duo program. If yes, now is an opportunity to create right policies to be inclusive of employee volunteer, virtual volunteer. The same goes for your match grant program. Can you increase your matching to organizations that provide relief to COVID-19? Jeff, next slide, please. There's also an opportunity to shift the focus from direct service to education and training. How can you build a community engagement or social impact skills with your employees and local community? This could be a good opportunity to bring experts to talk about social issues and educate employees in certain topics. We can think about holding online webinars, lunch and learning sessions, or even a virtual happy hour. For instance, companies in the tourism sector could continue educating their employees on human rights or sex traffic. Financial institutions could educate their workforce on the importance of financial literacy, especially in situations of crisis. You can also invite your nonprofit partner for a virtual listen and learning session, where they can educate employees about local community issues. This is a great way to engage your employees in learning about community challenges, keep your community partners close, and develop ideas for future projects. Another idea is to conduct a virtual board training and matching. Companies can offer virtual trainings to employees become a potential board members and host online speed dating or matching sessions with local nonprofits. I would like to invite my colleague Jenny to come and share to us a little bit more about ways you can help to keep your employee engagement by building and strengthening advocacy and awareness campaigns. Jenny, back to you.
Jonathan, thank you. And thanks for all those great examples and connections to partners. And we're happy to help folks make those connections where needed. And thanks for that great information. You know, I think one of the ways that you can really focus time and energy is on building and strengthening your issue advocacy and awareness campaign support at this time. I think something that's front and center for many, and I think for most Americans, it showed up in your mailbox this week in the midst of everything, is the 2020 census. There are a lot of challenges surrounding the census. There were going in, and the pandemic has really shifted the ability of census advocates to be in the field going door to door, and the money that supports some of that work, we've heard tales of that being redirected. So whatever you can do to send messages and educate your employees about filling out their census forms, even though it's crazy times, to engage. The links here will be live in the deck that we will share. These are all different opportunities to promote the census with your internal messaging and your communications with employees to get that census in. As many of you know, as most of you know, how very, very important that is to business in America. It's also a wonderful time to advocate for issues of importance in your community. End Hunger in 30 is a campaign that will start April 1st. That is a sort of national deep learning campaign. I invite you to check it out around hunger issues in communities. And they have a variety of toolkits and curriculums and an action campaign that you can implement with your employees, and I invite you to check that out. Points of Light very recently hosted a webinar with our colleagues at Polaris and some of our corporate service partners from UPS and others that really looked at the topic of human trafficking and strategies that companies are using to end human trafficking Times like these are an interesting opportunity to help your employees pay attention to issues that might have been just, a little too hard to pay attention to with all of the in-person meetings and demands that maybe are not quite as prevalent in their daily lives right now, and they can take a little extra time to learn about important issues. And we invite you to look at the Polaris website and pull down some of the resources that they have. I think another really interesting strategy, this is the time of year that many companies have a day of service or a week of service, is to really think about how do you repurpose that to a day of purpose, right? How do you think about a purposeful commitment to the virtual volunteering that aligns with the issues that your organization was going to tackle in their day of service? How is it a day of learning? How is it a day of online advocacy around those issues that your organization was focusing on on a day of service? Another creative solution for how do you pivot in this important moment. Thank you very much. Jeff, if you would go ahead and advance the slide. And finally, Points of Light invites you to join us in Global Volunteer Month. So as many of you know, for more than since 1974, the United States has been celebrating National Volunteer Week. And in Points of Light, we decided to take National Volunteer Week this year and really blow that up into Global Volunteer Month during the month of April. It's an opportunity to celebrate the impact of volunteer service and the power of volunteers to tackle society's greatest challenges, build stronger community, and be a force for good. Each year, we shine a light on the people and causes that inspire us to serve. And as you know, we had planned to launch this on April 1st to celebrate the global impact of our organization's combined efforts. And our organizations include you. And as the world responds to this crisis, we need these stories more than ever. And so instead of postponing, we're actually going to double down on our commitment to tell these stories, and we want to bring you along on that journey. Our hope is that through our shared networks, and your organizations, that we can engage people who are social distancing, sheltering in place, or are under quarantine to volunteer virtually or to tell stories about great volunteers that they are seeing and volunteerism that they have seen in their communities. We will communicate back to you all either later today or early next week with all of the toolkits that you might need to participate with us, or you can visit pointsoflight.org Global Volunteer Month to download your toolkit today. We encourage you to become an active partner. The hashtag local light is our way of tracking the local lights that are shining throughout our communities in this time. We invite you into partnership with us in Global Volunteer Month. Jeff, if you would advance the slide. So just in summary, these are the strategies for engagement, right? Provide virtual and remote volunteer opportunities. Focus on SBV and pro bono virtual projects. Your nonprofits need your talents and skills as business partners to them in this time, like they never have before. Tackle your own internal capacity building projects. Get your teams focused on those projects that maybe sat on the sidelines as you were trying to execute on those in-person events. Pull those back front and center and get that work done. Shift focus from direct service to education and training, strengthening and advocacy awareness campaigns. I think we are happy to hear from you through email, through Twitter, however, other ideas that you might have for engaging at this time. Jeff, if you would advance the slides. I now would like to bring up a really complementary strategy by introducing Holly McCabe. Holly is the Director of Recognition at Points of Light to talk a little bit about recognition strategies for recognizing volunteers and volunteerism during this time. Holly, over to you.
Thanks, Jenny. Recognition is widely accepted as an essential component of motivation and enhances employee engagement, productivity, and performance. When organizations focus on creating an enriching experience, such as recognition, employees are more likely to feel connected and want to continue with that positive behavior. Recognition is a great way to keep employees engaged, especially during a time when they aren't able to physically be present or in the field. Filming a brief video on your cell phone and emailing it to thank those who have gone above and beyond goes a long way with the employee and only takes a few moments of your time. Emailing, texting, or better yet, actually mailing a handwritten card to someone to show your appreciation for their work puts a smile on that person's face and typically lasts much longer than a quick shout out in a staff meeting. However you choose to implement recognition practices, remember that appreciation must be seen as authentic, fair, consistent, and personal to have the power to move your employees. But we all know you guys are doing great things. We hear about your initiatives and we commend you on striving to provide the best workplace culture for your employees. The Points of Light team wants that for you as well and are here to help provide encouragement in tangible ways you can quickly and effectively recognize your employees, especially during this time. Storytelling is a tangible way to lift people's spirits, and in this day and age, a sure way to get you trending on Twitter. Not sure where to begin? Start with focusing on recent wins, no matter how big or small. Exciting new ways of doing business, inspiring conversations with leadership, and even personal successes in a brief newsletter to all employees. Soon, you will see employees striving to be included in the newsletter and more engaged in overall business affairs. If a newsletter is not your company's style, consider highlighting one employee's initiative or success weekly to all staff. And Jeff, could you advance the slide, please? Similarly, Points of Light has been celebrating individuals daily since the Daily Point of Light Award was established in 1989 by the late President George H.W. Bush during his presidency. The Daily Point of Light Award recognizes extraordinary volunteers who are donating their time and talent to better their communities. Today, more than 6,600 Points of Light have been recognized and over 1,300 UK and Commonwealth Points of Light awards. We are always looking to recognize your volunteers, so please consider sharing this information with employees and consider nominating someone this week. More information can be found on our website or at pointsoflight.org/Daily Point of Light. Could this be the time you start a simple but truly meaningful recognition program at your organization? Additionally, when someone feels appreciated and valued, it affirms the commitment they've made to an employer and incentivizes them to continue contributing and excelling. Another great and easy way to recognize your employees is to provide them with an actual award. The cost does not have to be substantial, just a simple certificate of appreciation for their efforts is appreciated. Some companies are even providing electronic awards for employees to share via social media posts, since so many employees are currently working remote. Points of Light has partnered with the Corporation for National and Community Service since 2003 to offer the President's Volunteer Service Award. These awards allow companies to recognize their most exceptional volunteers who positively impact communities in every corner of the nation and inspires those around them to take action as well. Awards include bronze, silver, and gold pins, medallions, and coins based upon the number of hours volunteered, along with a letter from the President of the United States and a personalized certificate. More information about this award can be found at presidentialserviceawards.gov. Finally, what companies recognize is a direct reflection of what they value. So before I wrap up, I wanted to share how L'Oreal Paris recognizes their consumer family through brand value. For 15 years, L'Oreal Paris Women of Worth has honored extraordinary women who selflessly volunteer their time to serve their communities. These women are nominated by others annually, including their employers. L'Oreal Paris grants a $10,000 donation to each of the 10 honorees cause organizations, recognizes the honorees at an awards gala in New York City, paired with L'Oreal spokespeople, and 1 out of 10 women received an additional $25,000 to her cause organization, highlighting her as a national honoree. Now, I'm not suggesting you begin planning an awards gala in New York City this summer with hundreds of celebrities and executives. However, I do encourage you to use this time to plan for a large-scale recognition event that will inspire and celebrate your employees. Research tells us that 60% of best-in-class organizations found employee recognition to be extremely valuable in driving individual performance, and I would add, to keep great talent and ensure employees remain engaged. Even though most companies do not spend a lot of time or money in the recognition space, in times like this, it's going to be the little gestures that make all the difference. Please let us know if we can help you find big or small ways to help recognize your employees. Jenny, next, back to you.
Holly, thanks so much, and thanks for those terrific ideas. It's now my pleasure, Jeff, if you would advance the slide, to welcome folks to engaging employees when you can't volunteer in person, COVID-19 webinar from Points of Light in our global network, and to hear from our final speaker today, Katie Meisner. Katie is the SVP of Marketing and Business Development for Edelman's Washington office. She oversees Edelman's growth strategy in the Washington market, serving as a trusted advisor to senior clients and Edelman's positioning. In this role, she has close ties to Edelman's intellectual property and its response to immediate market needs. And prior to Edelman, Katie was a member of Axios' founding executive team, leading its advertising, events, and branded content. We're delighted to have Katie here today to talk to us about COVID-19 Trust Barometer research that Edelman has recently completed. Katie, thanks so much for being with us today, and over to you.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. Thanks so much for having me. And I'm really excited to share our special report from Edelman's Trust Barometer today on trust and the coronavirus. For those of you who aren't familiar with Edelman's Trust Barometer, it's a piece of research that is now in its 20th year. And our goal is to measure trust in institutions across the globe. Those institutions include the government, the nonprofit sector, corporations, and the media. And we take a high index approach, measuring these institutions via the public's trust in them across a variety of different markets. For this year, we released our Edelman Trust Barometer in January, and our key headline from this year, there's a headline from every year, is that no institution is seen as both competent and ethical. So if you think about trust as the intersection of competence and ethics, you have business being seen as competent but not ethical. You have the nonprofit sector being seen as ethical and non-competent, and you have trust in the government and the media at an all-time low. And that context is really important to put in relief as we think about the COVID crisis and how we can handle it. Next slide, please. A little bit more detail on our special report of trust in the coronavirus. We conducted a 10-market online survey globally with 10,000 respondents, 1,000 per market, between March 6th and March 10th of this year. So this is incredibly timely research and is intended as a supplement to the Trust Barometer survey that we released in January. Next slide. The headline here is that people are craving trustworthy information. And if you think back to what I said introducing the Trust Barometer study, you have trust in the media at an all-time low. And people are looking to understand what's happening, why it's happening, where they should be going as a resource for information. Next slide, please. One of the key takeaways is that 7 in 10 individuals globally are following coronavirus news daily. Many say that they follow coronavirus news several times a day, and if you look at this spread, that's true across all of the markets that we studied. Next slide. However, people are worried about the reliability of their coronavirus information. You have 74% of survey respondents say that they are worried there's a lot of fake news and false information being spread about the virus. You have 45% saying it's difficult for them to find reliable and trustworthy information about the virus and its effects. And you have 85% of respondents saying that they're looking to hear more from scientists and less from politicians. Next slide. The most trusted spokespeople on this crisis are scientists, health officials, and doctors. If you look at the left side of the slide, you have scientists clocking in at 83% as a trusted spokesperson, doctors 82%, and CDC officials at 75%. If you look at the right side of the slide, you have government officials at 48%, and journalists at 43%. So in some ways, the people who you might have expected to be most trusted on this issue, the mainstream media, 10 or 15 years ago, are now the least trusted. Next slide, please. One of the key headlines from our study is that employers are actually believed most readily when you compare employer communication to a government website, to a health company website, to traditional media, to social media. So earlier in this webinar, employee engagements, the need for employee engagement was discussed. You can think about an employer's communication on COVID as a way to earn trust, engage your employees during this time. Next slide, please. And what we take away from this is that there's really a critical role for business. There's a critical role for private sector leaders to step into the void and engage proactively in social responsibility strategies around this, engage proactively in getting their employees the right kind of information, and to the point made earlier on this webinar, the right solutions for volunteerism during this time of need. Next slide, please. The first takeaway here is that many people view their employer as better prepared than their country. So if you look at the percentage who say each is well prepared for the outbreak, you'll see the US in the middle saying that 51% of people believe that their employer is well prepared for the viral outbreak, 43% saying that they believe their country is well prepared for the viral outbreak. So keep in mind that neither of those numbers is particularly impressive, particularly when you compare to a country like South Korea, where 71% of individuals say that their employers are well prepared for the outbreak. So what the takeaway is here for leaders in the private sector is that there is always more you can be doing to ensure that your workforce is prepared and engaged to tackle this crisis. Next slide, please. After health authorities, employers are most trusted to respond effectively. So if you look at this slide, 85% of people trust hospitals and doctors to respond effectively to the COVID crisis. 46% trust the media to respond effectively to the COVID crisis, but 62% trust their employers. I think another key takeaway here is if you look at the NGO percentage, 53% of individuals trust NGOs to respond effectively to the crisis. So there's a real strategy here for private sector institutions to partner with nonprofits and partner with other NGOs in order to enhance the effectiveness of their response. Next slide, please. Government is seen as more effective when partnered with business as well. So if you look at the respondents here, in the US, 8% of people trust business alone to effectively lead efforts to combat the virus. 13% in the US trust government alone to effectively lead efforts to combat the virus, but 45% of people globally and 41% of people in the US trust government and business working together as a team. So again, for the private sector, that means facilitating conversations with local, state, and federal officials to see what you can be doing during this time of crisis and actively engage your workforce during this time of crisis. It also means, and we just released some new research yesterday on how private sector institutions are perceived in the US. And the key takeaway there is that people are looking to their employers not just to provide information, not just to say, oh, wash your hands and stay away from other people, but actually to proactively make sure that their workforce is taken care of. So that means everything from ensuring that people have sort of rainy day pay if they're dealing with ill family members, ensuring that parents can take part-time leave, making sure that there is a crisis plan, not just for how this is communicated about, but for how they are actively taking care of their employees during this time of crisis. Next slide, please. In terms of the communications themselves, 54% of people in the US are looking for daily updates from their employers. 19% are looking to receive information several times a day. So again, drives home the importance of newsletter strategies and similar strategies for engaging a remote workforce. Next slide, please. So our final takeaways here are, in terms of maintaining trust during the coronavirus crisis, number one, business and government must partner to respond effectively. Number two, private sector leaders need to take steps to protect their employees, their customers, and the local communities. And that means working in partnership with other institutions that are working to make sure that the communities are taken care of during this crisis. Number 3, communicate trustworthy information daily. Newsletters are a great tactic for that. And number 4, to partner with scientists, partner with doctors, partner with other authoritative spokespeople, because people have shown and they've voted that they do not want to hear from the media, they do not want to hear from CEOs during this time.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a terrific overview, and it's just so interesting, right? This is 10 days ago that this research closed, and I wonder if the statistics, particularly on how often people are checking messages, has actually gone up. And I'm sure some of the data you all are looking at is how this is changing over time as well. As we look at how folks are thinking about engaging their employees in this space of civic leadership, there's the messages around protecting employees. Is there anything about the local community that is a focus for you? And I'm sorry, this is like an out of left field question. You know, how any further indication for companies about how to think about that local community role?
Yeah, I think that one takeaway that actually wasn't spelled out in these slides, but that we did see in the latest research, is that a person like myself indexes very high on the trust index in terms of trusted sources of information. And so I think that drives home the importance of community in general. People are looking to their left, looking to their right, of course, you know, at a socially appropriate distance to understand what they should be doing. So at Edelman, one thing we're advising a number of our clients on is using social media, not just to engage their customers as they normally would, but actually to engage their employees, right? If they see stories of how their employees are potentially volunteering remotely during this crisis, potentially navigating some of the challenges wrought by childcare and other issues, then they're more likely to feel like they're part of a community and feel like they have solutions that are working. So I would say for corporate leaders navigating this, rethink your social handles a little bit. Rethink how you're engaging employees on your social handles. People are turning to social media more than ever. I think there was a stat from Instagram a couple of days ago that they've seen their viewership on some shows go up as much as 3-fold. So keep that in mind and think about social media as a channel, not just for your customers or your shareholders, but also for your employees, and make sure that you're using it to get information out on how you might build community during this time.
Terrific. I think that's really important, and I think super complementary to this, to the Global Volunteer Month effort that we'll be launching. Edelman is one of the partners with us in that initiative to really help you tell the volunteerism story, the community engagement story. So finding those ways to highlight and connect your employees to the stories of how their colleagues and peers are still finding ways to be engaged in this moment, I think is a terrific reminder of the power of those platforms. Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us today and taking the time to share with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Jeff, if you would advance the slide. So for those of you who've joined us today, we will provide this webinar recording, all of the resources and links in a follow-up email. And in the coming weeks, we will continue to provide strategies, ideas, and resources through a newsletter, through the Points of Light website, and for companies who are a part of Points of Light's Community for Employee Civic Engagement. If you are not a part of CC, our online platform, you can look for additional information in just a few weeks about how your company might join that community of civic engagement. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. We wish you health and good spirits in the days and weeks ahead. Points of Light is here to be a thought partner and an inspiration to you and your peers. And we appreciate you being with us today. I would finally like to thank Jeff Ader, who you've heard referred to throughout today's webinar. Jeff is senior manager on the innovation team here at Points of Light, and responsible for all of the great resources and the technical support for making this webinar and all of our communications happen. Jeff, thank you for being a terrific partner in this endeavor. For those of you who are part of our Corporate Service Council, we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar at the end of March on engaging your employees and understanding how to rebuild happiness and engagement in a post-COVID world. That'll happen at the end of March. Until then, be safe, and we thank you for joining Points of Light's Global Network. Have a good day, everyone.